following is a Night Owl presentation.
Hello again, it's Raul. Welcome to another episode of the Closing Tag podcast. We've reached the big 2-0, everybody. Episode 20. I'm still workshopping the name. It'll probably be something along the lines of things that I'm thankful for and not thankful for. Stay to the end of the episode to hear a very special message, heartfelt message, and a programming alert. So just keep that bear in mind. We do talk about some things I'm thankful for, like all of you. We also talk about things I'm not thankful for. Aaron Rodgers, for example, or as I'm going to be calling him throughout the episode, Qaron Rodgers. You'll see why in a bit. That would be spelled Qaron, by the way. I also talk about someone other than Kyrie Irving, thankfully, John Wall, and his agent, stirring the pot in multiple areas. Also, we're going to be starting off on a very somber note, talking about the Izzy Tichenor situation. You'll hear what I have to say about that. And yeah, so all in all, very exciting, very emotional episode. And it is a privilege and an honor to be able to do this with all of you. And that's because of this amazing sponsor that I plugged at the beginning of every single episode. And that is Galactic Blue, your professional web development, graphic design, and logo design resource. Visit galacticblue.net for more information on how your business can benefit from our services. And with that, episode 20, Big 2-0. Here's to the first 20 as I lift my Deadpool cup full of coffee. And here's to 20 more, at least 20 more amazing episodes. Cheers, my friends. Enjoy. Welcome. Welcome, truthers and believers. Welcome, grateful people and spiteful people alike. Welcome to another edition of the Closing Tag. Hi, I'm Raul Smith. I'm the president, CEO, co-founder, and lead developer for Galactic Blue. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening to the podcast. We are on most of the major platforms, as you know, including Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, Amazon Music, and more. And each and every video episode of the podcast is available on our dedicated Facebook page as well as on YouTube. Links are in the description. When you get there, go say hi, leave a like, sub to the channel, and hit that bell for a notification. If you could please, I would definitely appreciate it. I know I keep saying this part, but it feels like we've got a lot going on in this episode, so I'm not going to waste any time. Let's jump right in. Nobody cares about my white boy blue. So I want to start this first takeoff by offering my condolences to the family of Isabella Izzy Tichenor. Izzy, as she was affectionately known, was a 10-year-old girl with autism. She was also Black, a fact that will come into play here in a bit. Many that knew her described her as fun, outgoing, caring, loving, just a gentle soul. Unfortunately, Izzy's time on this earth was cut short because in early November, Izzy committed suicide. So one has to ask themselves, if she was loved by her parents and her family as much as she was, by all accounts, she was absolutely loved at home. How does one with that much love at home commit suicide? Well, the answer is simple. It's bullying. Her and many others like her experienced bullying at some time, at some stage in their lives. It's a tale as old as time. A new kid comes into a new situation. The other classmates decide that that person is unwelcome. It could be because they're different. It could be because they don't exactly fit the mold to their little clique. Whatever the case may be, they then decide to harass and bully this kid until they ultimately lash out or until they get in trouble with their parents and or the school faculty. Here's where I start to have a problem. Not with Izzy's parents, because they saw what was going on and raised concerns with the staff at the time. The problem lies with the staff that completely ignored Izzy's family's cries for help. The problem lies with the culture predicated on the simple belief that if you're not exactly like everyone else, well, you must be the one with the problem. The problem lies with the parents of those students because at that age, let's be honest, hate and intolerance is taught. It's more often than not taught at home. Now, remember when I said a few episodes back that the state of Utah was teetering very precariously close to being investigated by the federal government on a number of issues? Well, turns out I was the one late to the party. The Justice Department, according to an investigation that started in July 2019, that was over 2 years ago, found the Davis School District in Farmington, Utah, a suburban community located just north of Salt Lake City, was negligent in tending to a disturbing pattern of harassment, bullying, and discrimination against Black and Asian American students. Furthermore, the school board members apparently knew this was going on, had heard complaints not just from the parents, but from the other students as well, and still did nothing. And I'm sure there are parents listening to this right now. I'm being a parent myself. If my daughter came home from school one day and complained about being bullied or harassed by the other students for whatever reason, I'd be looking to try to resolve that matter as soon as possible. I'd be raising hell. I'd be questioning everybody. If I were on that school board, I don't care if the bullied student was white, Black, Asian, Mexican, whatever. I'm taking the complaints on behalf of that student seriously. How in the hell does a toxic school culture get so bad that a 10-year-old felt it would be better to not be here in this world than to be here? And the fact of the matter is, that community knew. They knew. They knew this poor girl and others like her were being harassed and bullied to the point of committing suicide and still did nothing. It goes back to a rant I did a while back about the Utah State Board of Education and how some of the members were either posting hateful things on their Facebook accounts or outright saying students can't use the word empathy during school. You remember my empathy rant? Well, it's clear as day to me, anyway, that these soulless ghouls in Davis County and in Farmington either A, can't see past their own little circle to see that their actions are negatively affecting others, B, simply don't care, or C, truly see Blacks and other minorities as subhuman and that they should just be happy with only being harassed, as opposed to other things that have happened in the past, like being lynched or thrown in prison camps. It's also clear as day, at least to me, that this is just a sample size of what this community in the state of Utah is. Again, predicated on this fit in or get out type of toxic culture. Think about it. Utah is the #1 state in the country in bullying complaints and #1 in teen suicide. This community has a very deep rooted problem with anybody that doesn't dress, preach, love, sound, and look exactly like everybody else. One that dates back to when the Utah Territory was being considered for statehood back in the late 19th century. And it goes back to what an old friend of mine would tell me when I was a teenager, and it's words that echoed through my decision to, at least for the time at that time, become a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you're not Mormon, you ain't shit. Now, I wised up later in life, found that a lot of what the church was doing and the leaders were doing to the LGBT community and minorities to be disgusting and revolting, and asked for and was granted my expulsion from the church. I saw what they were doing and are still doing today and wanted no part in being associated with that. Even today, you don't hear a lot in the media and the local news stations about Izzy Tichenor because they don't want to spark another Black Lives Matter type of rally. They don't want another Minneapolis happening, basically. Again, typical conservative ploy. Pretend an issue doesn't exist, sweep it under the rug, and whistle as you walk away. And to be perfectly frank and honest with you, I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending this and other problems just simply do not exist. I am tired of seeing racial division in this community and in this country being chalked up to people not taking accountability for their actions or reverse racism. I'm tired of seeing people treated like they simply don't matter because of where they come from, because of the color of their skin, because of their orientation, whatever the case. I am tired of looking at my daughter, worrying if she will be bullied because of her behavior, of her wanting to love a little differently than others. I am tired of pretending to play nice and say nothing when I see ignorant and hateful shit going on. And I am tired of occupying the same space as people who can look at this and either see nothing wrong with the problem or pretending it just doesn't matter because, oh, it's just Orients or Blacks, who cares? I care. Okay, that might be my biggest problem generally in life, is I care too much for other people that I don't know. I care about what happens to people at the hands of a corrupt and unjust system who prefers to look at a man, Kyle Rittenhouse, who went on a premeditated road trip to murder minorities and see him as a troubled soul in need of guidance. Yet, if a black man did the exact same thing, he'd be labeled a thug and thrown in prison for the rest of his life like guts. If a Muslim, if a Muslim did that, he'd be labeled a terrorist and thrown to Guantanamo Bay faster than you or I could blink. I care about what happens to people who are harassed and bullied every day by people who think they're still living in the 1960s and can't get past this concept that in order to be for America to be great, it has to be white and Christian. I care about the people in my life, yes, because a lot of them are affected by this. But I also care about people that aren't in my life, a great deal of whom I've never even met. And maybe that's why I have such a hard time coming to terms with the level of ignorance and intolerance for people who don't pray to the same God as you, don't keep themselves looking as clean cut as you. I mean, come on. They don't have the same skin as you, or the same haircut as you, or the same distance between their eyes as you, or that have tattoos, whereas you don't. Maybe I have issues with that because we literally fought an entire war because one man viewed an entire group of people as vermin in need of being exterminated, as opposed to people in need of love. Maybe I have always believed that if we all did look, act, and sound exactly the same, the world would get really dull and boring really quick. Maybe it's too much to ask. I get it. Maybe this community is just too far gone. But I have lived in perilous hope that one day the majority of people in this state would feel the same way, and maybe I still have that hope left in me that the day will come that instead of looking at an athlete like Donovan Mitchell as somebody that should just shut up and play ball when he speaks out on issues such as this, that this community will one day look at him as the activist, the leader, and the voice for change that this community and this country sorely needs. Maybe I'm asking too much of people that would rather just live in a bubble and pretend everything is a-okay. Time will tell. And days like today definitely make it significantly harder than others. But nevertheless, I still live in hope. So I get this question a lot, especially with people that, aren't in the know. What is the Telltale Heart? So in case you missed the episode several weeks ago with McLean Lindquist, The Telltale Heart is an award-winning film adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's short story, which takes a headfirst deep dive into the Sea of Madness, retelling a classic psychological thriller with a mind-bending, pulse-pounding, bloody, disgusting film, starring award-winning actor Sonny Grimsley, and directed by the brilliant McLean Lindquist. The Telltale Heart has won awards and made appearances in many short film and independent film festivals, ranging from the Film Quest Film Festival in Provo, Utah, to being awarded Best Short Film at the Minefield Film Festival in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to even appearing at international film festivals throughout the world. Revisit Edgar Allan Poe's short story as this film brings more than just a classic psychological horror story to a new audience, but also discovers a creative way to explore the groundbreaking psychological thriller. The narrative is enhanced through an unprecedented use of sounds and light, and the characters blend a modern sensibility with anachronistic charm, as seen through an unsettling array of time and space, while a shifting setting disorients the unwitting audience. What is seen and what is heard leads the perplexed audience to ask, what is insanity and what truly constitutes reality? TelltaleMovie.com for more information on this brilliantly insane thriller. So another issue that's really gotten me riled up lately has been people's defense of Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, or as I will refer to him going forward in this segment as Qaron Rodgers. That is spelled Qaron. You'll see why in a minute. Qaron has had to miss 2 games for the Packers due to the NFL's recent health and safety policy regarding COVID-19. Qaron had initially told the Packers that he was vaccinated against COVID. Key distinction here. And then in early November, Qaron tested positive for COVID. It was later revealed that Qaron was not, in fact, vaccinated for COVID. So, on the strength of him lying about his vaccination status alone, that should be more than enough to rake him against the coals, right? Well, like any story that I give my thoughts on this podcast, there is more. In an interview with former NFL punter and WWE announcer Pat McAfee on his podcast, Rodgers invoked the name of Joe Rogan, saying he's been, and stop me if you heard this before, doing his own research. And that he trusts Rogan over licensed and trained medical staff in regards to COVID vaccinations. He even went on to ramble and rave outlandish, ridiculous nonsense like how vaccinations make men impotent, or chemtrails cause cancer, or COVID is just an instrument of China in an attempt to take over the US. Listen, I get it. A lot of people still have this mentality of, it could never happen to me, so why should I be forced to take a vaccine that isn't even medically or clinically proven? Again, going back to that whole living in a bubble. A lot of people don't see how them not being vaccinated can hurt others without even taking into account COVID infections. So let me explain how that could possibly not even be further from the truth. First, should you get COVID, you put at risk any non-vaccinated person you come into contact with. You can think that you're the most careful and precautious person in the world, but all the hand sanitizer on planet Earth cannot fully guarantee somebody doesn't get COVID, especially if you're coming into contact with children or with old people. Hell, even wearing a mask doesn't fully guarantee this, but at least wearing a mask greatly reduces that possibility. Okay, second, should you wind up hospitalized due to COVID-19, that's a hospital bed that you're selfishly taking up. that could have helped somebody that's been in a car accident, had a heart attack, or even nearly drowned. Your actions, while not directly, could influence other people's very lives negatively in this regard. Lastly, and this is a key distinction that a lot of people fail to realize, this vaccine and every other like it, and I'm probably going to say this twice slowly, will not alter your DNA. Again, vaccines cannot alter your DNA. If you really need a lesson on how this is possible, may I suggest reading up on how DNA works. Then again, if you're getting medical advice from Joe Rogan or that snake oil salesman on YouTube, you know the one, maybe reading isn't your strongest suit either way. Just saying. Listen, bad enough that you think a virus like COVID-19 won't affect you as an athlete. I get you have money and the best health coverage a person can get in this country. And despite professional athletes supposedly being all about staying fit and healthy all the time, but to go out there and lie to your employer, an employer you had a months-long public dispute with, by the way, is a bad, bad look. Listen, I don't think anything Rodgers did, aside from the lying and coming up with excuse after excuse after excuse, was necessarily bad. But if you're that against the vaccine, just come right out and say it. You know, as much grief as I have given Kyrie Irving on this podcast about his whole situation, the one thing that I cannot say is that he has lied about being vaccinated, not even once. This is 100% on Qaron Rodgers, not the NFL's COVID vaccination policy, not the Green Bay Packers, not the fans, not the media, least of all, not on Pat McAfee, because I've been seeing a lot of that on Twitter as well. This is on one man, Qaron Rodgers. Go take a look in the mirror and let me know when you have an answer. So speaking of Kyrie, I ranted for a while now on Kyrie Irving and spent a good portion of the last episode of this podcast ranting on Ben Simmons. Well, I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is I'm going to be ranting on Simmons some more. But at least the good news is this will be the last mention of Kyrie Irving on this particular episode. So there you go. The Simmons saga took a rather interesting turn lately. Since our last visit on this podcast, Simmons has still not played a single game with his current team, the Philadelphia 76ers. And in fact, that team has now started to fine Simmons the exact dollar amount that he would be earning per game for every game he misses going forward. So essentially, they're suspending him without pay. The 76ers have also hired a team psychologist to help integrate Simmons back onto the court. The belief being that Simmons is dealing with some mental health issues that he's neglected to inform the team about. Enter Agent Rich Paul, not to be confused with Chris Paul or Logan Paul or Jake Paul. Completely different Paul family. Paul, whose clientele include Ben Simmons and Houston Rockets point guard John Wall, more on him in a minute, as well as LeBron James and Anthony Davis, has been very vocal and adamant about the NBA Players Association, essentially the Players Union, intervening on his client's behalf to stop the fining of his client. So essentially, he wants his client to basically collect the paycheck without actually working for it. But hey, don't take my word for it. Those were his exact words. When discussing the situations with both Simmons and Wall, Paul complimented the Rockets' handling of their own situation with John Wall, agreeing to pay the injury-plagued guard to stay at home until they find a suitable trading partner for him, adding that he would like to see the 76ers do the same with Simmons. Now, in case you don't know, John Wall was traded to the Rockets from Washington for Russell Westbrook a couple of seasons ago after going through 2 seasons of basically not being physically able to play due to multiple injuries. Like, there was a legitimate concern throughout the league that Wall would never be able to play again. This was right after signing a ridiculous 4-year contract. Granted, he is currently making more money on his player salary than LeBron James. That's how ridiculous it is. But he has bounced back physically and is able to play again. So the question is, why has he not played that many games for the Houston Rockets since the trade? Well, Wall has made it abundantly clear that he wants to either go to a contender or to one of the big market teams and absolutely does not want to be in Houston. So essentially either LA or New York. Houston has since agreed that Wall would not be a good fit for this young Rockets team, which they're trying to build up a lot of young stars, a lot of rookies, so forth, and is basically eating the cost of his contract until a trade situation arises. Now, I don't fault the players for signing these fat multi-million-dollar contracts that were offered to them. I mean, hell, if you or I were offered $80 million to do what we do on a daily basis, I guarantee each and every single one of us would grab the pen to sign that contract so freaking quick it would almost be a blur. And don't lie, you know you would. My issue lies with this fallacy, this delusion of grandeur that every big name should be playing in LA. I hear this all the time on Twitter from Lakers fans specifically. Oh man, the Lakers should really go get Damian Lillard. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if the Lakers got Ben Simmons? Oh, you know who the Lakers should really go get? Giannis Antetokounmpo. This was, of course, before Antetokounmpo won an NBA title in Milwaukee. All the while thinking that the Lakers could even remotely be able to do any of that without having to give up LeBron James, Anthony Davis, or Russell Westbrook. Memo to Lakers fans, and by extension, Clippers fans. Your teams are not gods. Your teams are not above the laws of the collective bargaining agreement. Your teams are beholden to the same structure of salary caps and team fits that the other 28 teams are beholden to. You don't just get to pick who you want to play for your team. That's not how this works. I don't mind you fantasy trading on Twitter for players, as long as that fantasy includes something more substantial and concrete than we'll just give the other team all of our scrubs, no draft picks out. And Nets and Knicks fans, you're no better, so save your breath. I've been reading your bring Donovan Mitchell to the Knicks or go get Joel Embiid Brooklyn tweets. As for Rich Paul, a word of advice. Maybe it would be wise going forward to not play this strategy of if you don't like where you're playing, just simply don't play and force a trade. Bad enough, Ben Simmons and John Wall are likely never going to be offered another big contract after all of this ever again. You don't want that same bad juju rubbing off on your other clients. Your LeBron Jameses, your Anthony Davises, your uh, other players that you have on your payroll. Just like the fans don't get to decide who plays where, neither do your guys, unless it's free agency. You know, they signed a contract. Now they have to honor that contract. So I know that professional wrestling is not exactly a popular topic with a lot of people listening to this podcast. It's often an art form looked down upon, but I've always found it to be a rather interesting art form. There's a lot that goes into pro wrestling. Obviously, you have to act like you're hurting when sometimes you're not. And sometimes you have to act like you're not hurting when really you are. A lot of guys act like they absolutely hate the person that they're in the ring with, but when the cameras go off, they go back to being the best of friends, grabbing a late night bite at the local Denny's. Athleticism has to come into play to be able to pull off half the stuff you see today. But also being able to speak. I mean, you can have the best look and the best physique in the world, but if you can't talk your way into selling the audience on a match or event that's coming up, you're dead in the water. Professional wrestling is at a crossroads right now. Many smaller promotions are really feeling the sting of the COVID pandemic. I mean, without crowds to buy tickets to go see their favorite guy perform, there's not a lot of money to be had. Unlike sporting events or concerts, pro wrestling lives and dies by the live audience. Which brings us to Ring of Honor Pro Wrestling. Now, many that listen to this podcast have no idea what Ring of Honor is, and for good reason. Aside from a 1-hour tape delayed program airing at midnight on a Saturday night, most markets don't get to see Ring of Honor despite being owned by Sinclair Broadcasting, one of the largest multimedia companies in the United States, with TV and radio stations in every market. Despite that, Ring of Honor has been in business since 2002, almost 20 years. And in that time, they've been the minor league or developmental promotion that has produced a lot of the great talented wrestlers that you've come to know and love. Guys like CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, or as he is known in WWE as Daniel Bryan, Samoa Joe, Adam Cole, the Young Bucks, Nigel McGuinness, Claudio Castagnoli, or better known as Cesaro, Tyler Black, or as he's better known as Seth Rollins, Kevin Steen, or Kevin Owens, Christopher Daniels, The Amazing Red, Brody Lee, Kenny Omega, Kyle O'Reilly, Keith Lee, Tommaso Ciampa, Eddie Kingston, Damian Priest, AJ Styles, so many others. I know I'm forgetting a few names, but every single name that I just mentioned either got their first big break or found their footing in Ring of Honor. This generation of wrestling fans owes a Ring of Honor a debt of gratitude, which is sad because of all the wrestling promotions in the world. Ring of Honor was the hardest hit financially due to the pandemic. And that's sad because as great as this generation of wrestlers is, the next generation may have to find a promotion other than Ring of Honor to hone their craft. Sinclair Broadcasting recently announced that all Ring of Honor contracts will either expire or be allowed to run out by the end of Q1 2022. Furthermore, the next big event for Ring of Honor, Final Stand, in December, will be their final show before the company undergoes what Sinclair calls a reimagining. The impact of this decision has already been felt as ROH alumni and former Ring of Honor champion Jay Lethal has already signed a deal with All Elite Wrestling. Lethal, a 20-year veteran at age 36, so do the math there, brings a level of talent and charisma that will allow him to shine in even a loaded AEW roster, as well as bring a level of experience that can only benefit the younger wrestlers there. Now, I'm not going to shed too many tears for the men and women in Ring of Honor, as right now there are so many other options for wrestlers to go and continue earning money. The sadness comes from the fact that this is truly the end of an era. The two mid-level companies of the 2000s, Ring of Honor and Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, are both essentially no more. TNA is now known as Impact Wrestling, and ROH faces a very similar fate. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, wrestling is a big business right now. I mean, aside from WWE and AEW, you also have Major League Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Game Changer Wrestling, the aforementioned Impact, the reimagined National Wrestling Alliance, the resurrected WOW Women of Wrestling, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, House of Glory, and so many other promotions. There has never been a better time, especially with technology being what it is today, to get yourself noticed as a wrestler right then now. And as for Ring of Honor, if this is the end, it's a sad story, yes. And, being unemployed sucks, trust me, I know. But also a cautionary tale. Mismanagement of talent and funds only serve to exacerbate the process to where we are now. And all COVID did was pull the plug on the life support system. Rest in peace, Ring of Honor. So since Thanksgiving, as of this recording, is right around the corner, I thought I'd take a minute and express my own gratitude. While I don't want to dwell too much on stuff that's kind of behind the curtain outside this podcast, this has not exactly been my best year, personally speaking. I lost my father to leukemia back in January. I almost lost my brother to alcohol addiction not long after that. I lost a 5-year relationship back in April by my own fault, by my own admission. I lost contact with a childhood friend over dumb, thankfully non-politically driven bullshit. And I've lost contact with my nephew over him being a completely dumb jerk. I've even lost my confidence and my self-esteem, though some could argue that I lost that last year during the pandemic. But I also gained some things throughout the year. I gained not one, but 2 really good jobs that helped me get out of my funk and helped me get out of Amazon. My business picked up exponentially thanks to an amazing deal with a client. I gained a ton of confidence in my own ability to code. I gained new traction on my relationship with some of my family members. And I started this podcast this year, an outlet for me, a techie, to talk about non-tech related stuff. So because we are in the spirit of gratitude, I want to close this episode of the Closing Tag podcast with a series of things that I am thankful for today. Some of these things will sound sincere and from the heart, and they are. And some will sound like backhanded digs at certain people, but that's okay. First and foremost, probably the most important, I am beyond grateful that I and my ex's family have not gotten COVID. I can't say the same for a lot of people. And aside from watching a friend become one of the over 800,000 people that have died as a result of COVID since the pandemic started, I've had to watch other friends fight for their lives because of COVID. Despite losing him in early January, I'm thankful that I got to know my dad and and his family better. I grew up with my mom and didn't really have a positive male role model growing up since dad wasn't really in the picture. And I'll be honest, I resented him for a long time because of that. But I go over it, got to know my brothers, and was able to spend what little time we had left together because of that. I was heartbroken when I found out that I was unable to help my dad with his medical issues due to one of my own. But I stand forever grateful that I got to spend what little time I could with him and will continue to spend time with my brothers and their families going forward. Plus, I have much cooler aunts and uncles and cousins than before. So, there's that. And kind of piggybacking off that, I am thankful relatively for my good health. I mean, I know at this stage in life, health tends to break down a little bit and just a lot of stuff could creep up and whatnot. And I'm thankful that I haven't had to experience that yet. Knock on wood. I'm grateful for my sister, who granted lives 2,000 miles away, but still makes it a point to check on her baby brother every once in a while. Make sure he's okay. We weren't always as close as we are now. And we had a bad falling out after mom died years ago. But we've rebounded nicely. And I think we've been thick as thieves ever since. Believe it or not, I'm thankful for my ex. She's helped me a great deal since our relationship ended with arranging certain weekends with my daughter, recipes for some of my favorite dishes that she makes, even words of encouragement every once in a while. I'm thankful for my daughter. More and more, she has really helped make me a better father and a better person. More than any god or religion or support group, she's helped me become the person that I am today. And I cannot thank her enough. I'm thankful I'm not deluded with this idea that any one individual is above reproach. As I've stated many times, no one is infallible, not even me. I could not imagine myself being conditioned into thinking everything a person does is great and they can do no wrong. You know who you are, don't lie. I'm thankful for the job and the career that I have. This is year 12 of my incredible web development journey. A journey that has seen a lot of turmoil and trials, ups and downs. But lately, I've been experiencing more ups because of my tenacity and my relentless pursuit for knowledge. As they say, ride the high while you can. I'm thankful for the friends I have in my life. From people I've known as far back as my high school days, and some even further back, to people I've met along this career journey, to people I've met over the years at random and have maintained a level of friendship all the same. From the guys that I've had on this very podcast, like James Scott of the Across the Pond Sports Podcast, Ben Phipps, Cruise Control of the I Want to Know What Love Is Today podcast, TJ Gaines and McLean Lindquist, to people like Ransom, Max, Weird Beard, Jen, Dave, Jenny, Marlo, Chris and Jamie, Adam and Mandy, Ash, Tiff, Norma, Tim, Jordan, younger Jordan, Anita, Sean, Judo, Bill, Jana, Corby, Big Steven, Karen, Layla, Danny, Jacob, all the crazies over at Cult of K-Babe, Realtor Tyler, Recruiter Ben, Blackline, Weird Sense, Graydon and Jody, my guy Andrew, Calhoun, Jeremy, Joshua, John and Mary Lou, Colton, Zeke, every single person that has ever offered a kind word of encouragement or helped me along in some way. I can't thank any of you enough. You've been awesome and incredible, and please know that I truly, truly think the world of every one of you. Lastly, I want to thank each and every person from Salt Lake to Denver, from upstate New York to the Pacific Northwest, from Paris, France to Mother Russia, that has ever downloaded the podcast, listened on any of our providers such as Stitcher, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, so forth, or scoped out the Facebook page, or watched the video episodes of the podcast on YouTube. You guys are absolutely amazing for helping make the lifelong dream of a 42-year-old boy from Ogden, Utah, become a radio personality come true. I cannot thank you enough. You guys are the absolute best, and I thank you all. So with that being said, I did want to mention a programming alert. This will be the last full-fledged episode of the Closing Podcast, or Closing Tag Podcast, that I'll be recording for 2021. Don't worry. I have some best of end of year content lined up and ready to go for your enjoyment. And if something comes along that I simply cannot wait until January to talk about, I'll drop a quick biddy on here for y'all. I mean, you already know the drill. Links for all the videos and all the content are available in the description of this very episode. And as a reminder, another thing I'm thankful for is that this podcast is sponsored by Galactic Blue, your professional web development, graphic design, and logo design resource. Visit galacticblue.net for more information on how your business can benefit from our services. And if you would like to help support podcasts, I'd be thankful for that too, and I'm open to suggestions. Hit me up at Raul at theclosingtag.com. Again, I cannot say this enough. Thank you guys for listening and for watching over the course of these first 20 episodes. And as I always say at the end of these episodes, remember to include your closing tags.